Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are plunging straight into, well, a really dramatic environmental paradox that's playing out in Australia. And if you follow global climate events, you see this tension all the time, right?
Right.
Between what used to be normal and this new volatility. Our deep dive today is into Australia's brutally severe and unexpectedly early start to the bushfire season.
Right.
And what makes this so shocking and frankly so confusing for a lot of people is that it's coming right after 5 straight years of incredibly wet conditions.
Yeah, years that were defined by catastrophic floods in some of these exact same places.
Think about that for a second, that flip. You go from waterlogged soil and swollen rivers to these wind-driven firestorms, and it feels like it happened overnight.
It did.
How does a landscape even do that? Go from deluge to just absolute volatile danger. What are the factors that push this so violently? That's really our mission for you today.
It's the quintessential example of climate instability in action,
Yeah.
and it forces a complete recalibration of how we approach planning. I think we have to start with the foundational insight from Professor David Bowman. He's a world expert in this.
Right.
And he has one central overriding message for all of us. And it's simple: expect the unexpected. And that's not just about, preparing for a bad season. It's a fundamental shift away from relying on prediction.
Yeah.
He argues that those traditional forecasts, the models we've trusted for decades,
To tell us what summer will be like.
exactly, they're becoming fundamentally unreliable in this era of volatility, assuming any forecast can be a crystal ball for the next 3 or 6 months. Well, it's just a dangerous form of complacency.
And that's exactly what we need to unpack. We have these two powerful forces colliding. On one hand, you have large-scale climate phenomena messing with rain patterns.
Right.
And on the other, you have these incredibly dangerous localized conditions. Specifically, this massive silent buildup of fuel that was actually caused by all that rain. So we need to look at both the macro and the micro to really get why Australia is suddenly, as they say, ready to burn.
Yeah.
So let's start with the immediate severity that kicked this whole thing off, because this wasn't a slow start to the season, was it?
Not at all. It was an ominous opening act. It hit with the speed and intensity of, like, a storm system. The severity was instant and just heartbreaking. These fires didn't wait for summer. In New South Wales, the first fires led to a natural disaster declaration in several areas.
Okay.
Fires near Koolewong and Bulahdelah destroyed 20 homes, just like that. And the human cost was immediate, too. It wasn't just geographical, it was personal. Tragically, a veteran firefighter lost his life battling that Bulahdelah blaze.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was struck by a tree, suffered a cardiac arrest, and the sheer speed of these fires on a Sunday night, it just underscored the danger.
And crucially, this wasn't just happening in one state. We saw almost the exact same thing in Tasmania.
That's right. Eastern Tasmania, wind-driven fires at a place called Dolphin Sands destroyed 19 houses.
So this wasn't some small brush fire. This was widespread, dangerous, and right at the start. So you look at those numbers, almost 40 homes gone across 2 states, a firefighter's life lost. It's no wonder the NSW Premier Chris Minns called it a foreboding beginning. It really raises that key question for you, the listener. How do you get 5 years of relative quiet and then this kind of instant disaster?
It forces us to confront this idea of an environmental hangover. Those 5 years of rain were a blessing in the short term. They kept the big fires away.
Right.
But it was a double-edged sword. All that water encouraged rampant, extensive vegetation growth. We're talking about mass amounts of grass, dense scrub, undergrowth. All of it had 5 years to just accumulate.
So while the risk was low because everything was wet,
The potential for disaster was quietly skyrocketing. The rain was creating these enormous fuel loads in coastal NSW and, importantly, in inland parts of Western Australia, too.
so the landscape was just stockpiling energy. Now, let's pivot to the mechanism that's igniting it, this really rapid drying trend.
Yeah.
Andrew Gissing from National Hazards Research Australia, he's highlighted how fast the indicators are flipping.
He did. He noted that while fire seasons have been pretty subdued lately, the key indicators are now changing at an alarming rate. It all comes down to soil moisture.
How dry the soils are.
Exactly. Once the soil loses that deep moisture, the vegetation on top starts to cure. It dries out fast and becomes, in his words, drier fuels ready to burn.
We actually have specific numbers that show this, right? This is where it gets really interesting.
Yes. We look at the the Keach-Byram Drought Index, the KBDI. It's the gold standard for measuring this stuff.
Okay.
And the former fire commissioner, Greg Mullins, he was recently out with volunteers cutting fire trails near Koolewong on the Central Coast.
And what did he find?
The conditions were stunning. Now, the KBDI scale goes from 0, which is totally saturated, up to 800, which is extreme drought. Mullins said around Gosford, the index was already at about 160.
160. Help us put that number in context. I mean, if 800 is a total crisis, 160 doesn't sound that overwhelming, but you said it's extreme dryness. Why?
It's because of the fuel loads we just talked about.
Ah, I see.
In an area with sparse vegetation, 160 might be manageable. But on the Central Coast, where you've had 5 years of massive growth, 160 means all the fine fuels, the grasses, leaves, small branches, are completely cured.
So you're like kindling.
Exactly, like kindling left in the sun for weeks. It takes almost nothing to ignite, and it burns incredibly fast, especially with wind. So Mullins was clear that reading represented extreme dryness, particularly because the change was so fast.
So if we connect these dots for you, the rain produced this huge latent energy source, the fuel. And now the recent heat and winds, plus a lack of spring rain, are acting like a giant hairdryer.
A perfect analogy.
And it's rapidly curing that fuel. The landscape isn't just dry, it's densely layered with highly combustible stuff.
Yeah.
But that lack of expected spring rain you just mentioned, that feels like the key. We expected relief, especially in NSW, but it just didn't arrive.
It didn't.
Why? Why did the normal weather patterns fail?
This is where we see the influence of these specific, really large-scale climate events literally rerouting weather patterns. The big one here was a rare event called sudden stratospheric warming, or SSW, over Antarctica.
Okay, what is that?
So, to put it simply for you, it's a rapid warming event way up in the stratosphere, like 10 to 50 kilometers up. And this warming, it destabilizes the polar vortex.
The thing that usually keeps the cold air locked down there.
Precisely. So it's like a massive hiccup in the whole atmospheric engine. And Ben Millington from the NSW Rural Fire Service explained the direct consequence of this.
Right.
He said the SSW effectively pushed that rainfall to northern parts of Australia.
So the rain that should have been soaking the fuel in NSW and Victoria got pushed away.
Pushed away. Contributing directly to the accelerated drying. The timing, I mean, it just couldn't have been worse.
It really shows how sensitive the Australian climate is to these things. And this unpredictability is overriding even our most familiar climate signals. We know the Bureau of Meteorology declared a La Niña last month.
They did.
And that usually means cooler, wetter weather for the east. You'd think that would be a protective buffer against fires.
And that is the critical uncertainty that is worrying everyone. In the past, a La Niña would give us confidence in a milder summer.
But not this time.
Well, experts are warning this La Niña might not deliver, or at least its protective effect will be really muted.
Why would a fundamental climate pattern like that fail to do its job?
Because of the underlying systemic influence of global heating. Climate change isn't just making things hotter, it's making them more erratic, more volatile.
Less predictable.
Exactly. Greg Mullins connects these dots perfectly. He says climate change is the underlying factor because it's making everything unstable. The whole system is running hotter and behaving in ways our old models just can't keep up with.
So you have a global event, the SSW, diverting rain away, while the expected protection from La Niña is being sort of overridden by general instability. It's a perfect storm of volatility. Okay, so given all that complexity, let's look at how authorities tried to get ahead of this. The seasonal fire outlook. That's the main tool, right?
It is. It's produced by the National Council for Fire and Emergency Services, and it synthesizes all this data, rainfall deficits, soil moisture, fuel loads.
And where did it say the risk was?
For this season, they flagged specific areas: southern Victoria, central western NSW, and a big chunk of WA. Places like the Geraldton Sand Plains, Jar Forest, Esperance Plains.
A pretty specific list. So it gives people in those areas a clear warning to prepare.
It does.
But this is where the failure of prediction really highlights the danger of volatility, isn't it?
Precisely. Andrew Gissing made the point that while the outlook shows areas of increased risk, the red zones, it absolutely does not mean everywhere else is safe.
Right.
And the start of this season sadly proved that point perfectly. The two defining events so far, the fires on the NSW Central Coast and in eastern Tasmania.
Okay, but wait, were either of those places actually highlighted in the official outlook?
And that is the critical point. No. Neither of them were.
Wow.
Neither the NSW Central Coast nor the parts of Tasmania that burned were identified as having a higher than average risk. This is that volatility gap we're talking about. The local conditions, the fuel, the wind, the rapid drying, they created the risk faster than the large-scale models could capture it.
It brings it all back to Professor Bowman's point. Expect the unexpected. I mean, if an area considered normal risk can suddenly go up in flames and destroy dozens of homes, it means every area with fuel needs to be treated as a potential risk.
Yeah, it seems the speed of climate instability is just outrunning the pace of our prediction.
So since prediction is lagging behind, the message for you, the listener, has to circle right back to preparation.
Absolutely.
Because after 5 years of relative calm, the most dangerous thing has to be complacency.
That is the essential psychological shift we all need to make. Greg Mullins' advice, just cuts right to the heart of it. He said, I'd say to people, after 5 wet years, put your fire hat back on.
It's about getting back into that active state of preparedness.
It is. And the consensus among all the experts, Bowman, Mullins, Gissing, is completely unified on this. For anyone in a bushfire-prone area in southern Australia, preparation is now non-negotiable. It has to be constant, no matter what the forecast says.
And we're talking about more than just clearing your gutters, right? It's about a mental plan.
It is. They all agree the smartest thing to do is have a proper bushfire survival plan, one that's written down, rehearsed, and ready to go. You have to build your own situational awareness.
So check the ratings, know your routes out.
All of it, whether you're at home or just traveling through an area. And the biggest part of this shift is to stop passively relying on forecasts. Stop treating the outlook like a crystal ball that guarantees you're safe if you're not in a red zone.
So to summarize our deep dive for you, this volatility is the result of 2 powerful forces colliding. First, big picture climate instability, like SSW and a weakened La Niña creating rapid drying.
Right.
And second, that environmental hangover from the wet years, those massive, now cured fuel loads just waiting for a spark. It's a setup for an exceptionally dangerous environment.
Which leads us to our final provocative thought for you to explore. The fact that the official outlooks missed the severity on the NSW Central Coast and in Tasmania, that shows a really significant gap in our planning models.
Right.
So if the speed of change means local risk can escalate so far beyond prediction, how far back does long-term planning even need to extend? And maybe more importantly, how often do we as just, citizens have to recalibrate our own local understanding of risk in a climate that is proving to be fundamentally unstable?
It requires constant vigilance.
It does.
The lesson is clear. Volatility is the new normal. So prioritize preparation, because relying on prediction alone just isn't enough anymore. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We hope this knowledge helps you plan and prepare for the season ahead.